In this tutorial, I will show you how to seam Tunisian knit stitches, how to seam the bottom to the top of a project or two tops together. Or if you want two bottoms, it's the same as with the two tops. You can use this technique to seam together one single piece of fabric. Like for example, if you want to make a cowl sideways, you can use Tunisian knit stitches and work like this, and then just seam the top to the bottom into a complete tube. Or you can use the same technique to create the ribbing on the edge of your project and seam it up nicely. Like you have here, this is the seam. So this is an almost invisible seam. As you can see, it's not completely invisible, but if you use the same weight of yarn in the same color, it will be nearly invisible in the finished project. You can also use this type of seaming if you make wearables where you have shoulder seams and you want to seam them together. They will usually be the same type of edge. So check out the second half of this tutorial to see how to seam that up. In this tutorial, I will demonstrate seaming both the top of Tunisian knit stitches to the bottom and then top to top. So depending on the type of project you have, you will be able to seam the sides together. So top to bottom happens when you make a tube, but I will show you with the contrast color just for fun. And I have some red yarn here, and I will use this red yarn for seaming. You will probably be using the tail from the project to seam, or you can attach some new yarn. You want to attach it to the first stitch here on the bottom piece. First, before we start seaming, we need to look at the stitch anatomy, and as you know, Tunisian knit stitches look exactly like knit stitches in stockinette in knitting. So you have the two legs of the stitch. We will be working behind either the back leg of this V or the front. You see them better when you're still working on the project. This is the back, this is the front. So we will be using these front and back vertical bars. And first we need to attach the two pieces. And in this first case, I am attaching the top of the project to the bottom, which is made in a foundation row. If you want a smaller seam here, you could start the project with a long tail cast on, which only leaves one loop here on the edge. So we go behind the two vertical bars on the edge of the second piece and come back and go through the last stitch, through the first stitch on the last row there on the first piece. Now that we've attached these, we can start making the seam. First of all, we go underneath the back vertical bar of the first stitch on the bottom and come towards the front. Next, we go behind the two vertical bars of the first stitch on the top. Then we go back to the bottom and behind the front vertical bar of the first stitch and behind the back vertical bar of the second stitch, and we come up. Then we go back to the top and we go behind the two vertical bars of the next stitch. Then we go down again behind the front vertical bar of the second stitch and behind the back vertical bar of the third stitch. Next we go up again behind the two vertical bars, and we continue in this manner until all the stitches are seamed. This is the easiest method because we're working in the same direction, so the intention is to just bring the bottoms of the stitches on the top, in the top piece, to align with the tops of the stitches in the bottom piece. If you're using the same exact yarn and color, you'll be able to create this extra row of stitches here. And they will be invisible if you keep the correct tension. So don't pull too much on the seaming thread. And this looks just like a row of grafting in knitting. If you want to graft stockinette, this is what it will look like. And you create a row of false stitches to connect two pieces of fabric. So this is the seam. If you want to, you can pull on the yarn and the whole thing shuts closed. So now you can't see the seam anymore. Of course you can see it here because the two yarns are different. And this is the back. As you can see, the seaming yarn is almost entirely hidden. And we can continue like this to the end, and I will meet you back here to finish the row. I'm almost at the last stitch and I realized that the gray piece has an extra stitch. So let's just skip one of those. So when you're at the end, you can either leave the extra row or just pull on the thread to close it up. And here at the end, we make the last stitch here behind the front vertical bar of the last Tunisian knit stitch. And then if you look at the edge of a fabric made with Tunisian knit stitch, you will see these. They look like knit stitches, even though they are technically the last stitch. But they have the same structure, so we have two loops here. So we go behind the back loop, and then on the piece at the top we have the two loops as well, so we go behind those two, and in the bottom we go behind this single loop here. Now we can tighten this up and secure the end. And that's the seam. You can weave in this end. You can see here I made the decrease. So that's the one seam where you seam a top row to a bottom row. This is what it looks like on the back. You have the two return pass chains, or in this case the foundation chain. And you can flatten this out a bit with the ends when you weave them in. If you don't secure your seaming thread when you begin, you can do this. As you can see, I just pulled out what I made. So you have to be careful and secure your ends. Now I will show you how to seam a top row to another top row. We don't bind off either of these, and I will be using the same yarn. First attach the end, or use the end that you already have, and then come up behind the two vertical bars here, the one on the edge, and then the back bar of the first stitch on the bottom. On the top, we have a very familiar thing, except now we have some return pass chains here. So we ignore those and we go with the needle behind the two vertical bars of the first stitch. Then we come back down, and then we go behind the two vertical bars that you're familiar with. So the front vertical bar of the first stitch and the back vertical bar of the second stitch. And then go back to the top and behind the 2 vertical bars of the stitch here at the top. We go back down behind the front vertical bar of the second stitch and the back vertical bar of the next stitch. And we go back to the top behind the 2 vertical bars, and we just repeat this to the end of the row. And again we have the same choice here. You can leave the stitches loose or you can pull on the seaming thread or yarn. So you repeat this until the end, and then we will have the same choice. I'll meet you back after the seam is finished. Once you're close to the edge again, you have to look at the edge here. So go behind the front vertical bar and the back vertical bar on the bottom, and then find the 2 vertical bars at the top, which is not so easy on this side. And then go behind here, behind the 2 vertical bars on the edge in the bottom. If you want to go inside the last V-stitch on the edge to finish here. And then you weave in the end as usual, and this is what the seam looks like. Looks like just like before, right? So you have a continuity of stitches here going in the same direction, even though if you look at it from this side, this is the actual Tunisian knit stitch, and on this side you have the continuity of this, which is offset by half a stitch from the original fabric. So these are the 2 ways to seam Tunisian knit stitches horizontally, and in a future video I will show you how to seam them vertically, so one edge to the next. So if you're interested in seeing that, make sure you subscribe to my email updates and to this channel to see when that tutorial is ready. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye!